Okay, Maestro, hit it.
I'm Wally Boag. I didn't know you knew Mickey Mouse.
Museum of the Weird.
The dawn of a new era.
Just a dream away.
Hello and welcome to the Disney Record Guy YouTube channel. I'm very excited about this upcoming interview that we're going to be sharing with you today because I have someone who I consider to be Disneyland royalty. She is a wonderful woman, and when you hear these stories that we're about to be going through, you're going to truly understand just how magical Connie Lane really is. Connie Lane, you may know formerly as Connie Swanson. She was one of the very first Disneyland ambassadors, not quite the first, but she got a close second, and we'll be hearing a little bit more about that. Connie, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Almost magical, but not quite yet.
Oh, Connie, I refuse to believe that anything with you is anything less than magical, knowing you. Connie, I'd like to really start from the beginning. So can we start off talking about what was your life growing up? Was California home for you?
I'm a native Californian. I was a late bloomer, but I loved the ocean. I loved to surf. I was lousy, but that didn't matter. I just loved to be out there. I learned to stay up on the board because I really hated going under the board. And quite often we'd go after school, if it could be arranged, and borrow a longboard. Nobody used shortboards in those days. The longboards were it. And I attended Anaheim High School.
Oh, so right there in Anaheim.
Right there in Anaheim. I walked to school. I walked through Pearson Park. When I've looked at some old pictures of Pearson Park, I thought, wow, that was really a gorgeous old park. And Anaheim High School is kind of past its glory days a little bit now, but it's still there.
And what was your like growing up for your exposure to Disney? Did you see a lot of Disney movies and TV shows growing up?
Oh, mainstay, books, movies. I think the first one I can remember, and I don't know if it's even in your genre, was Little Toot.
Little Toot was just a tug, just a happy harbor tug, and it came from a line of tugboats fine and brave.
And Little Toot gets out in the harbor and the waves, and I'm sobbing. I'm just a little kid, and I'm terrified for this poor little boat, this little scared. The waves are. My mom said, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to take you out. Okay. And of course, Little Toot rescues the other boat. You don't know this story, you got to learn it. It's the little engine that could, only a little different. So yes, and Bambi, loved Bambi. Again, the fear of man in the forest. And let me see, of course, Sleeping Beauty. And then they'd re-release Out of the Vault, they called it at the time, and Snow White. That's one I really enjoyed and learned to enjoy it through Walt's eyes later on. Yeah, Disney films. If there was a Disney film, I was watching it.
How old were you with that Little Toot?
Oh, maybe I was only 4 or 5, but I was absolutely terrorized. The idea that this little tiny thing would be out there and the ocean waves are coming down, and the little Toot's out there and he's lost, and scary stuff for a kid. Not in comparison today, but for me it was.
Now, as we get a little bit older in your time, for you're not quite a 4-year-old, we get you a little bit older to the point that Disneyland first opens. What was your first experience with Disneyland?
I don't remember the age. I'm sorry. Numbers are kind of nebulous to me. They're just, I remember the emotion and the sense and the feelings and the music, but perhaps not the age. So I can't give you the date, but I can remember we would kind of got dressed up. A skirt and blouse, and my mother would wear a nice little dress and heels, and we'd go out to Disneyland, loved to go on the Golden Horseshoe. My mother did. She was terribly fond of Donald Novis, who was the Irish tenor. I think I could even hear a little sigh.
And now Mr. Donald Novis.
Hello, everybody from Maine to California. This is the Golden Horseshoe.
He had the most marvelous voice. And if you don't know who he is, look him up on YouTube, because his history, he was stupendous. My mom once said I had seen more of the heroes and icons of her generation than she'd ever had a chance to. The big bands, they were all at Disneyland. She didn't get to see half of them, so she and I would go out and watch the big bands. So there's a lot of things that way that were just incredible about Disneyland. I'm sorry, I digress. Disneyland was just so clean. And even as a kid, it was just so clean. And you didn't think of dropping anything or making a mess. You kept it was your house, your backyard. You wouldn't make a mess. So I was young when I went out there, but it made a big impression. And a lot of the kids in high school would say, if the park was open, you want to skip? And I said, no, grades are too important, but it does sound good.
Well, look at you focusing on your studies. Now, I do want to ask you a little bit, going back to Donald Novis and the Golden Horseshoe. That was where you had one of the first experiences with Walt Disney. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there's Walt's box at the Golden Horseshoe, and it's as you're facing the stage, it is the right-hand side, Roy's left-hand side. And it was always held for them if they were in the park, because Walt would just come in, like he did everything else. He'd go see how is the guest reactions to this. Well, he brought some guests into his box. They sat down, and I was with my mother at a front table, and I'm going, and mother goes, yeah, that's Walt Disney. I said, can I talk to him? And she goes, well, sure. What are you going to say? I said, I just want him to know how fantastic this is, how much I'm loving it. What a great time. And she said, go for it. So I jumped up and walked fastly up the steps. They hadn't put the rope across or drawn the curtains. Had they done that, I would never have done that. I never would have intruded. And I tapped him on the shoulder. And about that time, cast members are descending on me. No, you can't bother him. He's here to see the show. And I'm apologizing because I thought I didn't know the protocol. I didn't know what was accepted. I just wanted to tell him how much fun I'm having. I'm so sorry. Went back, sat down. My mom said, good try. It's important, parents, give the kids some kudos for trying something they were afraid of, because at that time, that was way outside of my zone to go up and talk to him. But that was my first chance.
That's so neat. Can you tell me a little bit about how later on, obviously, you're going to see Walt a little more. Can you tell me about how you came to work for the Walt Disney Company?
Oh, I paid a whole $2.50 to get into the park, because that was the main gate admission at that time. You bought books or just main gate admission. And I knew that Donald Novis was working in City Hall, and he was now over guest relations. And so I paid my way in, and I was dressed spit and polished. I had my little high heels on and waited till he came out of the horseshoe or out of the City Hall. And I introduced myself to him. And I told him that I really loved the tour guides in Disneyland. I was hoping to be a tour guide someday. And he goes, well, that's very nice. What can I do for you? I said, I could use an application so that I could apply for the tour guides. And he said, we don't quite do it that way. You have to go in and sign in and to personnel and interviewing. I said, oh, I appreciate that. I'm afraid that if they hire me, they'll put me on something that they need, like Storybook Land. And I'm just not a Storybook Land person. He goes, why do you think they put you on that? So I'm really good at telling stories. I do wonderful narratives. Not like being too brash. And Don laughed. And eventually that day he got me an application, which I filled out at that moment and gave to him. And he goes, now I'm not hiring you. I said, I understand fully. I'm not 18 yet, but just in case you need me, I'll be turning 18 at the end of the summer. And could I have a spiel? I understand that there's I think it was 18 pages then, or 14 pages spiel. And he goes, I'm not hiring you. I said, I know, but it'd be awful if I was at school and you said, come in, and I didn't have it memorized, because it had to be memorized verbatim. So he laughed and he went and got me a spiel and again said, I'm not hiring you. And I said, I understand, but I'll be prepared. Then I left. But I think, and he went back into City Hall. I think he forgot why he came out to begin with. And maybe he just decided it would be good to wait in City Hall for a while till I left. And I made it in there.
Was that 18-page spiel, was it hard to memorize?
I'm very slow on verbatim. When we do shows at school, I could give you the general gist, but not verbatim. So yes, it was very hard for me.
Now, the big question is, do you have any of it memorized still?
No. Other than, here you leave today and enter the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy. It gives me goosebumps even now, because we'd be in the tour gardens. We'd have introduced our tour so that they knew where they were from. I didn't use names because everybody knows I'm really lousy on names, but I could remember where the people were from. Say, these folks are from Dakota. These people are from Texas. And I'd like you to meet. That's the way I'd start my tour. And then before we'd leave, I'd point out the plaque at the main entrance. Say, that's what we're going to be doing. So leave today out there. That's about the only part I remember. I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. That is the most important part of this spiel, I feel like, because that's what Disneyland really is. It's stepping apart from reality into this fantasy that Walt Disney created. And it's truly, the second you go through that tunnel and you're right there looking out at Disneyland for the first time, it's miraculous. I mean, I feel like every child remembers that first time they cross through and they see Main Street USA, and it's overwhelming because it's a completely different world.
True. Hear the train whistle.
Oh yes, and
it's like calling you back to that period of time.
That's so, and it is truly, truly neat. And it's one of the, I mean, Disneyland was the first park I went to. I mean, later on I would go over to Florida and had my Florida time, but it's still Disneyland. That's Walt's park. That's the last place he walked around. So eventually you got the job as the tour guide, and we get into, obviously you have that 18-page spiel memorized. And now at one point you had an interesting moment as a tour guide, though, that I have to ask you about because it's one of my favorite stories. You ended up having to jump into the Disneyland Rivers of America while you're conducting a tour. How did your group respond, and what caused you to jump into the Rivers of America?
Do you know where the petrified tree is? or
Yes,
was.
yes.
I don't think they moved it. It's not easily movable. I was standing down there giving a spiel about rivers of America and Tom Sawyer's Island, and a child from my tour climbed up and over the petrified tree and fell in. And it was like, you just do what you think you got to do because there's a necessity. Nobody else was going in, so I kicked off my shoes and jumped in. It's not that very deep there, but still, and got the child out, and then called for a replacement to come and take over my tour because I was a little soggy looking to do that. And actually, there's another tour guide that went in. Aida Olachoa had a similar thing happen. And I think after that, they raised the fences and changed the access to the rivers of America.
And I understand when costuming found out about it, they only had one question for you.
No, it was Cicely Rigdon.
Oh, okay.
I went into the office, I still had my riding crop because it's around my wrist. And she goes, "Is your hat wet?" Yeah, no, yes, it's wet because I didn't take it off. Those hats were guarded like gold because they were velvet and moisture would really do damage, but I didn't take it off. And in truth, my hair was in no shape to be seen underneath the hat. So I wouldn't have. Did the hat get wet? Yes. I'm sorry.
Now, before we get into you becoming a Disneyland ambassador, can you tell us just what is a Disneyland ambassador? You were the second ever one. So how did the program start?
There was a need for someone to go in Walt's stead. He did not mind going out and meeting people, doing PR promotions, but that wasn't what he wanted to do. He wanted to be in his office where it went, planning, building, making dreams work out. So they needed someone who could go in his stead, fill his shoes, as it were. And it seemed like a really good idea on the 10th anniversary to have this person emerge as a Miss Disneyland at the time was what it was called. And everybody who was, I shouldn't say everyone, because Disney wasn't broad enough in their thinking to have men as well as women at that time. It was just single women who were invited to fill out an application and try out. Now, of course, they know how fantastic the guys are too.
Oh, trust me, you can't. I come from a career field working in aviation now as a flight attendant. So that's a field where we had a very similar background with that. It was young single women, and you're retiring at age 32. That was the environment, and that was the time. I'm glad that we have opened up the ambassador program to some other areas too. Now, the ambassador program being known as Miss Disneyland.
Oh,
Can you tell us about why the name was changed from Miss Disneyland to the Disneyland Ambassador program?
well, if we step back and look at the world at that time, it was Miss America, Miss California, Miss Utah, Miss whatever. And so it was just kind of a natural segue to being a Miss Disneyland. And then I did a trip, I think that was the Northern California trip, when one of the interviewers said, "So, Miss Disneyland, was there a bathing suit contest involved in this?" And I went, no. No, we don't operate that way at Disneyland. It's your knowledge of the park, your ability to meet people, and I'm thinking, and handle some strange questions. And so, no, there was no bathing suit contest involved in it. After we came off the shoot, Jack Lindquist, who was head of marketing at that time, he goes, "I think we're just going to introduce you as an ambassador from Disneyland." I said, "I think that's a great idea."
And that just shows a lot of Jack Lindquist just keeping the ball rolling, just like, okay, well, this didn't work. Now we're going to try this.
That was
And
Jack.
and that's, I mean, there's so much everything you read and hear about Jack Lindquist. It's, I mean, just an incredible personality there. What was it like for you working with him?
Fantastic. He seemed very low key, but his brain was going constantly, just like Walt's. He'd come up with ideas, and if they didn't work out, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And for example, with the ambassador program, he wanted to have a whole line of jewelry, of clothing, of dolls that could be marketed at the park. And I have seen some of the jewelry he had, but then even as an ambassador, that could have worked, but it didn't work into fruition. I have seen pieces that were put out there in the beginning. I didn't get any because I didn't move fast enough, but he thought every little girl would like to be a tour guide, be an ambassador, have the costume.
And it's a wonderful costume. I mean, I can't imagine why any little girl would not want to have that costume, because it's such a beautiful costume. Even the tour guide costume of like with the stables and the hats and everything, it's like makes me think of like the stable rider, and it's such a cool costume though.
It is. It's beautiful and colorful, and you always feel crisp in it.
Oh, I bet. I can only imagine. How did you finally end up becoming a Disneyland ambassador?
I applied. I stood in line. Our interview process was held in the Fantasyland Theater, if you can think back to that period of time. And we had a line of young ladies that went out through the castle to the Fantasyland Theater. Inside the Fantasyland Theater were filled with cast members who also were trying out. And you went up on stage and were interviewed by, and I truthfully can't remember who were our interviewers. There were marketing and studio personnel. They selected from that the next group, and they basically did the same thing until the last 5 were sent up to the studio. And I was having such a good time. It just was like, oh, this is the main gate. And I am so excited. And we'd go into an office and we'd sit and talk with a vice president or director. And I was just like, oh, this is so great. And they'd ask questions and we'd answer them. Finally, Arlene goes, Connie, you know they're interviewing us. No, I didn't realize this was, it's just very naive. I was just there because it was the best time in the world and I was enjoying it so much. So then I was a little more cautious in my enthusiasm, perhaps, but not a lot. Lunch, we got to eat at Walt's table in the commissary. Walt and Roy sat at the next table and watched us. And not a lot of eating, but a lot of talking going on at our table, and excitement. And the evening we went out to dinner. So they worked us a long day to see how we would perform for a 10-hour, 12-hour day. Mm-hmm. Did we get grumpy or did we, whatever. And that was when the selection was made, but we didn't know it. And for a time, they kept it under wraps. Although Cicely insisted the person who had it knew it. And I thought, well, that's not me because I don't know it.
Did Walt say anything to you all when you were auditioning, or was he just kind of like watching silently in the background?
Well, he had a few questions, few general questions. What did we think of the park? What was our favorite attraction or happening at Disneyland? And he listened. Mm-hmm. That was one thing about him. He always listened. He'd come into the park. I'd had times when he would join the back of my tour. When I was walking up Main Street, I'd be walking backwards and spieling, and there'd be Walt at the back of my tour, not to hear me, but to hear what the guests had to comment, what they were saying. He was very open to that. So it was very exciting, man.
Oh, absolutely. Do you remember what favorite attraction or happening you had told him at the time?
I told him wherever I was. I'm in Fantasyland, it's Fantasyland. And because it was. It's the truth.
I feel like that's showed a lot of why you would go on to become the ambassador, though, because it shows your adaptability and that whatever experience is here, that's a part of what, and you can keep the excitement going wherever you are. And I think says a lot about your personality, and that's wonderful.
I think it says a lot about Walt on wanting or being willing to take a chance on somebody as effervescent as I am. Sometimes that goes in several directions at once.
Now, Connie, I will not have you selling yourself short on my on my YouTube channels, though, because you are truly incredible. And I want to kind of go into a little on my first exposure for a lot of the Disneyland ambassadors was like when Walt was taking Julie Ream, the first ambassador, around on World of Color.
Look pretty, Julie. You know, this is Disneyland's 10th anniversary. And I'd like to introduce Miss Julie Reams, who has been chosen as Disneyland's official ambassador this anniversary year.
How do you do?
And I must say the judges showed good judgment.
Thank you, Walt.
Julie will be representing us all over the world, and she's well qualified. She's one of Disneyland's tour guides. And this is a tour guide costume, sort of a jockey-like costume with a riding crop. And sometimes you're referred to as guest jockeys, isn't that right?
Right.
Now tell me, Julie, what do you tell the people about our future plans?
Actually, I don't know too much about them, but I do know that there is a great deal of excavation going on in Disneyland. But I would like to know a lot more if I could.
You've come at the right place. This is our Imagineering department. It is here where we dream up all the future things for Disney.
And that's where the first time you see, looking back, you're like, oh, what is this Disneyland ambassador thing? And he's showing her talking to Rolly Crump and everything. What kind of TV experiences? Because obviously he was putting a part of the ambassadorship into some TV programs. What were your TV experiences as a Disneyland ambassador?
Well, we visited 5 different countries, and each one of them we did television stops, which are entirely different in South America than they are in the United States. And one was a stage performance by their rock star, Roberto Carlos. He was charming, he was fun, he kissed me on stage, the kids screamed and yelled, and that was my first glimpse of that world. From there on, wherever I went, I had young girls following me because Roberto Carlos had kissed me, and they wanted to hug me or shake my hand. It was just so funny. They were so cute. And oddly enough, or not oddly enough, I ran into someone here in Las Vegas who, as a teenager, had loved Roberto Carlos. And she goes, I think you met him once, didn't you? I said, oh, are you going to hug me? Yes, that was an exciting moment.
That is so great. So as far as the ambassador responsibilities, were they largely like making TV experiences, or what were the bulk of the Disneyland ambassador responsibilities for you?
Well, it could be anything from going to the state fair. I love state fairs. I loved meeting the kids. 4-H Club, they were so fantastic. And sometimes I would run into the same kids that are raising lambs or steers. And wow, I want to tell you, the Heartland is a wonderful place to be. These kids were spectacular. Gave you a lot of faith in the youth of America. We did a lot of signings. We did a lot of hospital appearances with Mickey Mouse. That will touch your heart. And I don't think there's an ambassador who hasn't gone into a sick ward in any of the children's hospitals And the kids do not react specifically to me. It's Mickey. And you see their face light up. And a child who hasn't spoken because they've been so sick for so long talks. That's an experience that'll live with you forever. The kids would just start to heal. Oh dear, I'm sorry. They would start to heal because of the magic of the mouse. And that was such a wonderful experience. Sorry.
No, you absolutely don't have to apologize for that by any means. That is, that's something that touches me very close to my heart. My cousin was, she was a Give Kids the World child. She had gone to Walt Disney World, and anytime I just remember hearing about those stories of how magical and how she felt. I remember when she was at the hospital, they had the Tooth Fairy came when I had gone to visit her, and it just, seeing the light on her face when she has a gift from the Tooth Fairy to wake up to the next morning, it's just, it's a magical experience, and I am
hard to put into words.
It is it's something you
have to
have
see
to
it.
experience. Yeah.
Feel it.
It is one of the most beautiful experiences, and that's one reason why I absolutely love and adore Give Kids the World down in Orlando, the village there that partners with Make-A-Wish. It's one of the most magical places, and I'm so glad that you got to be a part of people who are really hurting, that you could give them that experience, because it means so much.
It does. It does. In South America, we visited quite a few polio clinics. Now, again, I thought as a kid, polio was gone. It isn't. And they would have clinics that would take care of the children who couldn't be taken care of by their family anymore. These marvelous nuns would run the medical help for them, and we would make the trip there, and Disney would leave a small amount of money and some toys. And because we partnered in South America with Coke would also donate beverages for these places. But you just forget the battle that so many children are fighting. Mm-hmm. So again, South America was another place that was very touching that way.
I bet. Now, was South America, was that one of your, as far as like what countries you visited, was there quite a few, or was South America one of many? Or?
5. We went to Uruguay, Peru, Brazil. I didn't realize it's a big land space and very diverse sort of cultures. Argentina, oh my goodness, they have some wonderful food there in Argentina. And beautiful people everywhere I went. And again, because I didn't have a preconceived notion, it was even more delightful, I thought, what I'd seen. But again, we flew in conjunction with Varig Airlines. I got to sit up in the cockpit. Can you believe that? That would never happen anymore. But you're sitting up there and you're looking out and they're coming towards the landing strip and it's night and you're going, okay. This thing is huge. It's overwhelming to see them doing that. Okay, I'll go back to my seat now.
Do you know which planes you were on by any chance?
No.
Okay. No, it's okay. I'm always that's the aviation nerd in me coming out of it, so I have to ask that one.
No, they were just remarkable planes, and the stews, because they were only stewardesses at this time, were so incredibly polished and talented and spoke so many languages and could converse on anything. They were charming. I was very impressed with them.
Now, in terms of when you were traveling to, when you're mentioning speaking other languages, did you have a translator with you typically, or did you have to learn any languages as an ambassador?
Oh, I'd really be in trouble if I had to learn. No, I'm very good on language development, shall we say. Usually we would show up, and I think you have the picture in Argentina where there's Snow White and Mary Poppins with me. And they also had a translator. But the young lady who was acting the part of Snow White, because that was my re-release film. Out of the vault came Snow White. Talk about lucky to travel for that one. And she would do the translation for me.
Okay.
Kind of funny. I really liked her, so I just kind of hung on to her hand and just went. It wasn't very fair. I left poor Mary Poppins out.
Well, that's okay. Mary Poppins will have her re-released years later, I'm sure. Now, apart from some of the international experiences, what were some of the Disney events and Disneyland events that you got to be a part of at this time?
Well, I helped open Small World, but there were a few hitches in the program on that. I was in Sweden at Skansen, which is a cultural center, marvelous place. And I was with Olof Palme and a minister and various other members of the cabinet. And we had a telephone and we had a script, the good old script. And we're reading it. And I'm talking with Walt, and I said, "Thank you, Walt." And then I can hear Walt say, "Something's wrong with the line. I can't hear." I went, "Thank you, Walt. I'd love to say the dedication now." And then I read my script the way it had been written, and whatever else, have a small world, wonderful day. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. The phone just went dead. I am so sorry." And Mr. Palma was so gracious. "That's okay. We understand about these things." I said, "Thank you so much." I said, "You were just a part of the opening of It's a Small World." Of course, nobody else knew it, but we felt like a part of it. And let's see, opening of New Orleans Square. That was a great event. Walt was just vibrating with excitement. He was enjoying it so much. He was enjoying the guests.
The dedication of New Orleans Square has been underway for some time. I think a lot of you folks that have been to Disneyland in the last 2 or 3 years have probably noticed this big hole out here that wasn't filled up. Well, we finally got it filled up. And that big hole is now New Orleans Square. For this occasion, we're very happy to have the mayor of the real New Orleans here with us, Mayor Victor Chiro, to help us dedicate the square.
We had the music, the sounds, the fragrances. I swear there were magnolias blooming all around us. And on that picture of the opening of New Orleans Square, I'm in the background. Walt is, of course, addressing the guests. And on his left is the mayor of New Orleans. And then he showed the mayor of New Orleans his New Orleans Square. Went into the perfume shop and various locations, listened to the musicians who were absolutely the best in the world. So I really enjoyed that. Later on, when we opened the Blue Bayou, Walt came in, and that's a dear memory of mine because he asked me if I had pencil and paper. I didn't have a purse. I went to get pencil and paper, came back, and he's got his pen out and he's writing on the napkin, the linen napkins. I don't know what they use in the Bayou now, but it was a linen napkin. He goes, "This tree is too low. We've got to go in and raise it. We'll close tonight and we'll raise it 10 feet. And something else, needed fireflies. And, he just went down the list and he's writing them on the napkin. And at the conclusion of his notes, he just folded up the napkin and shoved it in his side pocket. So whenever I'd see him and there'd be like a bulge in his side pockets, I knew he'd been making notes on things that he wanted to change, things that he wanted to add. That was fantastic. But I also carried pencil and paper from that day on.
I think that says a lot about the early Walt Disney Company too. When you hear Walt saying, "Oh, this tree's too low. We need to raise it 10 feet by tomorrow," and but they would get it done.
They would. It was amazing. And I thought, what's wrong with the tree? Yeah.
I think in Rolly Crump's book, there's a story that he talks about that I always love. Of there was a shop that was supposed to be up, and he's like, "There's no shop here." They're like, "Oh, don't worry." They had it up from the morning. By the afternoon, they had built an entire kiosk, and it was a kiosk that was there for years after. And he was like, if they tried to do that today, it would be months.
You couldn't do it. And the trees that they moved in, was it? I don't want to say for sure who it was. It had a tree that they said, you have to be really careful with this tree. This tree came in front of the Dominguez house, and we have to preserve it. Walt says nothing can happen to this tree. So they planted the tree, and the crane, when they were unhooking it, smacked into the trunk. And the Imagineer, I wanted to say it was Rolly, but I can't remember right now. He thought, I got a big chunk out of the tree. So he went and found cement. He molded cement to make it look like the tree, carved it out, sprayed it, it hung on. Next day, good to go. He said every time he was in the park, he checked on that tree to see if the bark was okay. And eventually that piece fell off because the tree grew and got rid of that splint, if you will, on the front of it.
That is super neat.
As far as we knew, Walt never knew.
I do want to ask you about another opening day event that you were a part of, which involved one of my favorite Disneyland performers, Wally Boag, which was the opening day media event for Pirates of the Caribbean. Can you walk me through that event?
It was raining, and I was in a hostess costume with a velvet hat. So I had my hat covered with a plastic bag, because that's what you did with those velvet hats at hostessing or tour guiding, wearing a gold suit with the raincoat over it. And we had the press group. We came down to the dock, and the pirates came out and forced us to get onto the Columbia. And then they performed a routine, more or less, had some music. They had some ladies hiding down in the hole. Couple of the pirates got shoved overboard, and then we came around over to New Orleans Square, where we were disembarked. And if you look in that picture you have with Wally, where he's poking me with the sword.
Oh, yes. And I'll put that up.
I still have the cup, because they gave us these grog cups, but kind of like no place to put them. And I wasn't going to put it down because I knew I'd never get it back. And I had a purse on that trip. So when we went on down for Pirates of the Caribbean, I rinsed out the cup and I shoved it in my purse. So it came home with me. I didn't want to lose, but Wally was so funny. And I was uncertain if he was going to threaten me with the gangplank or not. But he was just such a character. Delightful man.
Did you see a lot of Wally Boag?
The entire Golden Horseshoe cast and crew went to Seattle for a trade and vacation show when I had just been tour guiding for a short period of time, and I got to go. And myself and Donna Parton Clark were the two tour guides that went. She was normally over the hostess division, so she donned the red tour guide costume, and we stood next to a mock-up of the castle, and they had this beautiful painting. And the Golden Horseshoe would do performances in a travel show, you know, with people walking around. And Betty was just always elegant, always elegant. Wally, always funny. And of course, Bolton was your best friend. And then for an afternoon, one time they took us out on somebody's yacht and we're going around the marvelous islands in the Seattle area. It's like, this is a gorgeous place. Really pretty. So yeah, the entire Horseshoe cast and crew went on that particular tour.
That is so neat. Now, as far as celebrities that you came across as a Disneyland Ambassador tour guide, who are some of the celebrities that you would regularly, or not regularly, well, just ones that you had maybe come across?
Julie Andrews was often on tour with me. She was a gracious, gracious lady. Her family, nice, pleasant, polite. I don't have enough words to say how pleasant they were. I really enjoyed them. There were a lot of people that were perhaps the old silver screen. My grandmother and I used to watch TV all the time, and there'd be all of the old shows on. And so I enjoyed Rosalind Russell and Edward G. Robinson, and on up from that period. Dick Van Dyke was also awesome. Very funny, very pleasant.
In a motor car, oh, what a happy time was spent. Bang, bang, chitty, chitty, bang, bang. Hop five for friend or friend. Bang, bang, chitty, chitty, bang, bang. Hop five for friend or friend.
I had Richard Burton and his daughter and nanny and, well, small entourage on tour. He was gracious, very gracious. Elizabeth Taylor another time came through. And once again, people maybe took advantage of the fact that they were in a casual atmosphere, but they never lost their decorum. They were always pleasant. I am just astounded at their capability to handle situations that were out of the box. Those are some of my favorites.
Now, I understand with Julie Andrews, your mom got involved with this process of you giving her a tour. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
My poor mom. Really important. Can you come out to the park and get a picture of me with her? Because we weren't doing any press shots or anything of that type. So my mother came out to the park and she didn't want to interfere. So I have this great shot of the castle. And if you look really hard, there's someone in a pink sweater down there, and that's Julie Andrews. And I'm in the So I was disappointed, but I was proud of my mother for having such common sense.
That's so great, though. And then you also, right behind me, you'll see I have a postcard of Annette. You got to take Annette around as well.
What a delightful lady. So pleasant, so sweet, very soft-spoken, just absolutely kind, very enjoyable to be around. She just touched my heart. Very, very. She touched my heart enough that one time she came in and she wanted to have a Mickey Mouse watch like mine, which was being sold Timex, whatever. And they didn't have them. So I gave her my watch because she touched me and I wanted to share.
That is so neat. Now, in terms of, so this, just I'll hold that up here. This is a postcard that they would send out for Annette for when she was getting so much fan mail, because she was super big at the time. I mean, she was the most popular Mouseketeer. Was she swarmed in the parks?
Usually she'd come in for like Christmas parades or something, and our guests are so busy seeing the things that are new in the park, the decorations, the parades, that I don't think a lot of them saw her because they were there with their family and they were having a good time. And I think they were just genuinely, if they saw her, it was like, you know, and maybe they'd take a picture,
Mhm.
So she was not swamped as some of the others had been.
Now, were there any celebrities that you took around that that was kind of the opposite, that they were kind of swarmed?
Well, I really had to be on my toes with Richard Burton because he's was a very happy-go-lucky when he was in the park, and people would just get so excited that they'd kind of follow in droves. So I would do a lot of strange tours to places that maybe I wouldn't have taken someone. He goes, "Oh, we're kind of going backstage." I said, "Yeah, we are." It was safer to handle the situation that way. But yeah, he enjoyed a lot of people following. I made the tabloids with him.
Did you?
Yes. Stopped at like a 7-Eleven or something, and they had things across the front, like Richard Burton, Sinful Day in Disneyland. I went, huh? Wasn't my day. And then I'm looking through the front of the car. I get out, shows me on Small World with Richard, his daughter, and the nanny. Richard, Sinful Day in Disneyland with that blonde. And I appear to be the only blonde in the picture. Didn't exactly trust tabloids a heck of a lot after that period of time.
I can only imagine. That's not, I mean, to be fair, tabloid journalism isn't exactly the peak of quality journalism, I would say. We're going to get a little heavier with this next question. You were the last Disneyland ambassador before the passing of Walt. What can you tell me about, what was he like?
He was a great guy. He didn't like inner office memos. Sometimes I'd be up there talking about a tour or giving a report, and he'd say, let's go to whoever's office and talk to him about. And I was kind of surprised because I thought you always just shot off a memo. And he told me, I don't like memos. Things get lost in memos. They get held up at one office or another office. I go to the office itself. So I really liked his hands-on style of leadership. He didn't put it in writing and wait to see what they said. He went down and talked it over at that moment with them. And I really thought that was great. He loved the park. He loved watching the guests in the park. One of my favorite memories of him is in the apartment, because I would often give my reports about a tour to him in the apartment office or at the Burbank office. He's looking out the window, you know, the window. He puts his hand on the edge of the windowsill, and he's just kind of leaning forward, looking out the window, and he goes, they really like my backyard, don't they? I said, yes, well, they love your backyard. But it was like an aside to himself. They really love it. Kind of like, right? They really love it. And yeah, they do.
That is absolutely one of the coolest stories and one of the most beautiful things, just because I feel like you got to see one of that rare side of Walt.
I was so lucky. So lucky. He would tear up over the fireworks. We'd be watching the fireworks from the balcony, from the family balcony. And he'd say, I really like that. And I love fireworks too. That's a very exciting thing for me. So yeah, he was very enthusiastic about the spirit of the moment.
And as far as how did you often speak with Walt?
As often as I could. If he was in the park, yes. If I'd check in to see if he needed anything. And if he had any questions about whatever was my latest tour, any opportunity I had, I would make myself available to talk. I can remember him sitting on the bench at Town Square, just kind of leaning forward and looking down Main Street. And they've captured that in a publicity shot somewhere. But I did stop and sit down next to him, and I asked him what he saw. And he says, marvelous things. So many things to be done. And then I excused myself because he was deep in thought about tomorrow, what he was going to do, what it was going to be like. Awesome man.
And there was a lot who were constantly towards the end there. It was really hard because it came very sudden when Walt passed.
Very.
A lot. Was there any signs for you, or was it just very unexpected?
No, I had heard him cough a little bit, but nothing that would be an alarm factor. I don't think any of us at the park knew that he was, I don't think half the studio knew, but that's just my personal opinion. So,
how did you end up finding out that he had passed?
I was working in the guest relations office behind City Hall, kind of adjacent to the Jungle Cruise. And we were answering phone messages and general park inquiries. And Donna put down the phone and she said, guys, and we just all went silent. She said, Walt's died. What? She said, Walt has died now, just a few minutes ago. I left the office in tears because it's like saying your dad's dead or your grandfather has passed away. It's a very hard thing to comprehend when you have no hint that it was coming. A lot of cast members went home that day because they couldn't bear it. It was pain for a lot of people. I stayed because I said that's what Walt would want me to do. I stayed and answered phone calls. Retreat ceremony was really difficult that night because they'd lowered the flag to half-mast and they announced to the guests at Town Square that Walt had passed away. I don't think there were very many dry eyes at the flag retreat that night. And actually, years later, somebody sent me a picture and asked me if it was me at the flag. Picture of my back standing there watching the flag at half-mast. You'll never forget it because it's a part of your life. It's a part of your family. And the next day was hard to come to terms with, but you knew where you were. And you knew that Walt wanted his guests to have a good time. That was the prime requirement. Make sure the guests are comfortable and have a good time.
Thank you for sharing that story. That is really one of the most, I've looked back on some of the stuff and I know like it was a very cold December day. There was light snow that day and just standing out there, feeling the chill of the air. I know that's an incredible hard time, and it's for so many people because it left the company and so many people a question of what would happen now. And as far as what did happen now, what did Disney kind of become like for you as it became a Disney company without Walt?
Well, first of all, it's never without Walt.
Mm-hmm.
Because the cast members carry the magic. They're the real magic, as far as I'm concerned. It was interesting to watch Roy step into the position that he had never been aspiring to. Roy was a numbers fellow, and now he had to be the visual fellow for people to identify with also. There was a lot of learning. Of course, I wasn't management, so I couldn't really see their struggle, but I could feel it. Publicity, they didn't have any kind of press kit on his death because it hadn't been anticipated. And then Roy stepped in and everyone kind of mustered to do what needed to be done. And Roy would come out to the park and people would see him and be able to identify with him. I think the hostess or the ambassador at that time was Marcia Minor Phillips. I have some pictures of her with Roy. So it was hard in ways I can't imagine because I'm not privy to that knowledge. It was hard on the cast members too, but they did the best they could to keep the magic alive. And I think they did a good job.
Absolutely. And as far as your ambassadorship, that by that point it had ended, correct? It was for 65.
Oh, yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
I only had a year and a half. Darn, I'd love to have. Don't be greedy.
And so at this point you were doing guest relations?
Yes. Hostessing high heels, nylons. That's a word you don't hear very often nowadays. Usually a hat of some kind. Kid gloves. Oh, I love the kid gloves. Nice purses. It was very exciting. It was just a continuation for me because I had enjoyed the people part of my tour, if we will.
Now I do want to talk a little bit about the items that you have behind you. We have some really neat, obviously we've been looking at that wonderful picture of you and Walt this entire time. What can you tell us about that picture?
Oh, you want to know about it, huh?
I mean, obviously.
That's the day he gave me my attaché case. Oh dear, I'm not turning the right. There we go. And in that picture, and just about everybody knows it now, he's telling me how to pose because I don't know. No, but nobody's taught me before. If you look at that great shot of him, it's a lovely 3/4 view of his face. He's not looking at me. He's looking off my shoulder and he's telling me to give myself the best profile. I should look off of his shoulder. And then it looks like I'm looking at him, but it gives a more comfortable and flattering picture. And you can see how well I took the direction because I'm looking at Walt Disney. I'm standing here with him. I am going to absorb every second of this. I'm going to look at him and just sop up this moment like a sponge. But I did try to remember it for future uses. But I look at the picture and I laugh because he's trying so hard to teach me. And I am just so thrilled to be there and so excited at the moment.
And we have are those the various name tags behind you as well?
Yes. Well, I have name tags back here. And then this one, this has my first main gate pass.
Oh, wow.
And some of my name tags and a complimentary admission, which probably reads $250. I don't know. I said
I
it.
see the 2. I think that, yeah, that probably
might be $2. You never can tell. So that was kind of a treasure to me. And then some of like the light magic and 45 years and just the electric parade. Somewhere I have a light bulb that I bought for the electric parade. Remember when they discontinued it? They sold a little box with a light bulb from the original. And they sold thousands, if not millions of those. And I bought several of them. So.
And now look at it. Electrical parade coming right back.
Right. Well, they wouldn't want those light bulbs back anyhow. I think they were saying the other one would be my guide pin, my hostess pin, and my ambassador pin is in the small.
That's so neat.
Actually, that's the second one. My first ambassador pin, I polished so hard, I took all the gold plating off of it. I still have it, but I'm certainly not going to show you it. It was like, polish that thing.
Now, as one of the earliest ambassadors, have you been a part of a lot of Disney events over the years?
Anyone that they had that I could get into, I was there. Every new selection of an ambassador, I've never missed one. I've been there. Some of them they've introduced those of us who came. And in some instances in the early days, they gave us really nice tokens. Can I spin you around? And
yeah, absolutely.
I have the rescuer back here that was, let me know when I get there. There you go.
Oh, perfect. Oh, wow.
That's a real cell. And then, well, I purchased the Mulan one. I walked into a Disney store. Have I got that in focus at all? And Ming Na Wen had signed that. And I said, that's one of my favorite shows. I have a daughter who's very Mulan. Very. And then the gold Mickey, that was a gift from the ambassador program. And when we had, we had an accident and the Minnie Mouse went down earlier today. This was the box for the 50th anniversary of the ambassador program.
Oh, wow.
And all of us had one of these boxes. Am I getting it in focus enough?
Yep. Yeah, I can see it.
And inside the box on the plaid was our picture. That one being at Small World, because that was the biggie for me. And then the medal.
Wow, that is beautiful.
Both sides of this medal are gorgeous, showing the directions that Disney came with.
That is super neat.
Isn't that gorgeous?
That is
50
beautiful.
years of an ambassadorship. So they've been very kind, very kind. I have downstairs an artist rendering of the Fantasmic, and they gave it, I think that was probably 10 years afterwards. They gave us that up in the Club 33. Gorgeous piece of work, but can't take you down there. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Now, a second ago, we did just see the Small World records. You used to hand those out?
Yes, that's what I traveled with. Everybody else has pictures well, I had a calling card like Annette's that I would carry with me. Then the Small World, do you want me to spin back?
Oh, yeah, you can show it, yeah.
We're so learning here. Oop, don't knock anything down. And this is the album, which
I'm sure
this one.
Many parents were just thrilled with you handing out It's a Small World.
Yeah, this came with us. I carry them in my briefcase, and I'm afraid I'll knock it down. So I'm just there, if I may. I have that tendency, and you can see the gold Mickey. They gave us the gold Mickey, and I said, darn, I got to get the gold Minnie. So I did. And then the next year they gave us a gold Minnie. Oh, darn, now I got to go find another Mickey to buy.
As far as you said, you go to the ambassadors every year. Do you speak with a lot of the new ambassadors?
As many as I can. I don't get down as often because of the time frame it would take me. Janet and Carol and I keep in touch quite a bit. Sherry, quite a bit. Emily, I'd love to more if I could. Talk about an elegant lady. You should get to meet Emily. Emily Benedict Zinser, or Zinser Benedict, sorry. Classy, classy lady. And she had tried out for the ambassador program 3 or 4 times before she was chosen. I might add that in those times, you had to have your suitcase ready and packed so that you could go immediately on a publicity tour. I cannot imagine the strain of having your suitcase packed and not going somewhere. Emily's family would plan for her to go on a trip if she wasn't chosen. She's a wonderful person. They all are. I really enjoy them. Brothers and sisters. They're my brothers and sisters. In this case, it could be my kids, but
what advice would you give some of the newer ambassadors who are just experiencing this program?
I think the most important thing is to be you. You were chosen because you're you. You're a unique individual and you have something special to give to the program. So many times you try to be something else, but that's not what you were chosen for. Be true to yourself. Be yourself.
That's wonderful advice. And I absolutely love that. Now, in terms of when you finally left Disney, how long were you a part of Disney?
Come on now, I've never left Disney. They don't pay me per se, but I do have a silver pass, which Walt gave me the day he opened New Orleans Square. So yes, they pay me. I would have been 74 when I officially left, but I've gone back for special publicity things, or as I say, for the selection of a new ambassador. I've always been there to lend my support to the new person.
And you've met some of the Disney CEOs too.
Oh yeah.
Did you meet both Iger and Chapek?
Yes. Both of them, I think the first meeting was in Walt's apartment. And Bob was was at the Disney apartment this last Christmas. They invited us back out for the candlelight. Oh my gosh, was that fantastic. The ambassadors came out. We had a little bit of dinner. We came in to watch the candlelight and we cried almost the whole way through. I mean, there were so many tears from everybody. And then afterwards, I was asked if I'd like to go up and meet them in Walt's apartment. So love to. Be my pleasure. Especially if you can hang on to your hand, step over all the cables.
Is it overwhelming as you come back into Walt's apartment, even all these years later?
It feels like home. It does. I was surprised how many ambassadors had never been up there. Now, my daughter and I and grandkids had come out to the park quite often, and we had been treated to just going up in the apartment. So I have pictures of them out there. And then one year we went up there with the ambassadors, and some of them had said they'd never been up there. Celeste goes, Mom, I feel really weird. I've been up here several times and they haven't. Well, they didn't catch that as part of the training program. So it feels like home. Well, of course, I put stuff around like crazy anyhow. So
I was going to say your home is almost a miniature Disneyland, but I can relate to the experience if you can't tell behind me. So that's just so incredible. You have had such an amazing, truly wonderful and magical career. And it's clear just speaking to you, just how much of the magic is still inside your heart and your personality. And it's one of the most rewarding experiences, just getting to have the time to speak with you and getting to relive some of those wonderful and truly incredible memories. Now, in terms of memories as an ambassador, do you have an absolute favorite one from your time at Disney, and not necessarily as ambassador, but maybe as a tour guide as well?
I think the one I shared with you about Walt writing on the napkin, that's the pinnacle of my memories. The very best. was watching him formulate things. Once in the apartment, he told me he wanted to spray water into the air and project onto it. Now, I had never thought of doing anything like that, and I was really having a hard time grasping what he was saying. And so I said, "You mean like a rainbow?" He goes, "Yeah, only tiny droplets of water." That was the beginning of Fantasmic.
That's so amazing.
Isn't it though?
It's
Now,
like you get chills just thinking about that.
Yes, oh, I do. I get goosebumps. I wear long sleeves a lot. But that's hearing him talk about things that could be, teaches you in your own life that could be is possible. So I guess that would have, well, yeah. After we've disconnected, I'll say, "Oh, I should have told you about John Wayne or something else," but the Walt, those would be my favorite.
Oh, and I'm sure there's a handful of great memories, but I mean, obviously, in terms of me, John Wayne or Walt Disney, I'm going to go with Walt Disney stories so anytime. And you have shared some truly incredible ones today, and I cannot thank you enough. It has been a wonderful, wonderful interview. And
very, very kind. Thank you so much for wanting to let me walk down memory lane. This has been a lovely afternoon.
It really has been. Connie Swanson, as some of you may have known her. We don't have a book from Connie yet, but we're gonna talk her into getting a book written, because these stories are just truly incredible, and I'm so glad that we got to share them today.
Thank you so much. Love you guys.